Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Veterans Voices. Tonight, we will be talking with veterans from two different eras about their experiences going back to their combat zones. Welcome. I'm Nathan Johnson, host of Veterans Voices, and tonight I'm joined by my co-host, Aaron Esquer. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back. Glad to have you. The mission of Veterans Voices is to explore the experiences of veterans, important issues that affect the community, and to connect vets and their families to supportive resources and events. If you're watching tonight and would like to share an experience or ask a question, please send us a message through Facebook at Veterans Voices 1, email at veteransvoices@contracostatv.org, or call us at 925-313-1170. Our phones are open now.
Tonight we have the shadow box of Air Force veteran William B. Haft, retired Master Sergeant. William is a third-generation serviceman who served 25 years of active duty as a flight engineer. In his career, he has logged over 6,500 hours of flight time and had missions that range from transporting presidential limos to patrolling the skies over Iraq and Afghanistan. He is currently the 60th Air Mobility Wing Exercise Planner in the Inspector General's office at Travis Air Force Base.
Tonight, we'll be talking with two different generations of veterans who have all returned to the places of their wartime service. We will be discussing the reasons they went back and the experiences they had while they were there. Our first guest tonight is Mickey Ganich, a Pearl Harbor survivor who has returned to the site many times in the years since World War II. Mickey, welcome to the show.
My honor to be here. My name is Mickey Ganich. I was born November 18, 1919 in Ohio. I joined the Navy January 21st, 1941. I spent my time in the Navy, and I retired from the Navy October 10th of 1963. In between that time, we had World War II, Korea veteran, and I am just honored to be here because a lot of the people, a lot of friends I knew did not make it. I am honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you, Mickey, and you said November 18th, so that would make this your 100th birthday. Is that right, sir?
That's right.
Well, you know what? We got a special surprise for you tonight, Mickey, so happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you.
So we're bringing out a cake for you.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You get to make a wish.
And look at that. The candle's actually lit there, Mickey. I don't know if the camera can see it, but it's still lit.
I see it.
All right.
Happy birthday, sir.
Happy birthday.
Stick around. We'll cut that at the bar down the road, okay?
All right.
Well, Mickey, so tonight's topic is returning to the combat zone, and you, of course, are a Pearl Harbor survivor, as you mentioned, and so you've had many experiences of traveling back to Pearl Harbor since that day in 1941. So tell us a little bit about the first trip that you took. When was it, and how did you decide to make that trip back to?
Well, I'm not sure just what the exact date, but it's probably about 6. But I've been to Pearl Harbor many times there during the war, after the attack.
Okay.
So being back to Pearl Harbor later didn't mean as much as being back there in between times there during World War II. We were attacked there. Things were very hectic there. Lost a lot of my friends there. A lot of bad memories there. A lot of good memories because memories that the bomb missed me at Pearl Harbor, but it didn't miss a lot of the other friends. And a lot of my friends are still there. So I just try to think about the future. You can't change what happened before. I think about the future. We're a good country, no better for worse there. It's the best country. I always tell people they don't like this country, I'll help them move to another country.
Okay. Well, to give our audience a little bit better of an understanding of your experience, we've got several pictures of your experience during Pearl Harbor. So if we could pull those pictures up here. and we'll run through them in a slideshow, and maybe you can kind of narrate what our audience is seeing.
Oh, okay. That's when I had hair. That's 1942 when I had hair. Time has gone by.
So this is a picture much later on in life, but you still have a little bit of hair, Mickey.
Yeah, but that's me when another Pearl Harbor survivor is sitting there. Mike Stetz there, he was one of the other Pearl Harbor survivors.
And the gentleman, okay, so what's this a picture? I think
That's
they're on fire.
my picture of my ship, the USS Pennsylvania in dry dock. Just on this side of it is the Castle and Downs 2 destroyers in the same dry dock with it. The smoke in the background is Arizona burning in the background. That's after we got hit. After we got hit with a 500-pound bomb, they flooded the dry dock to put out the fire. Only bad thing about it, the fire came on top of the water. The oil from the destroyer caught fire, so it had flames all around it because oil and water don't mix. But that was the only hit that we had during the attack. We had a lot of concrete around us.
Boy. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. That looks horrible.
That is the USS Oklahoma, sister ship of the battleship Pennsylvania there. That's the people cutting holes in it, trying to get people out. I know 2 people went out through portholes while the Oklahoma was rolling over. Thanks to the chaplain of the USS Oklahoma. He was a big guy. He pushed people out through the porthole. He couldn't get through them himself, but he pushed other people out through the portholes, but they got as many people out as they could.
Okay, and this is your ship?
That is my ship, the battleship Pennsylvania. The bomb had hit our ship was in between those 2 masts there.
So this is where you were sitting in the mast. What do you call that? The crow's nest?
That's the crow's nest. That's my battle station. I was the lookout way up high. I was higher up in some of the planes that were flying around there. But the bomb went through 2 decks, exploded. It shook me, but did not hurt me there. But it's kind of scary to see a big hole alongside of you. We lost 23 men that day, injured a lot of other people. But it's kind of scary there, the bomb hitting us. That's the ship after we got underway. We were an old ship built in 1916. They used it for fire support. That's a ship out at sea there. We had 14-inch guns on it, and we could do about 50 knots downhill with a tailwind. We didn't have the speed, so they used it for fire support for the various invasions, many invasions in the North Pacific.
Well, we just got a couple more pictures here, and then we'll give you a little break with your voice. But what are we looking at here, Mickey?
That is on the battleship Missouri. That is General MacArthur signed the peace treaty in Tokyo Bay. Right in behind him is skinny General Wainwright, the one that he left at Crickador, and he went to Australia there. Next to him is Admiral Percival, English Admiral. In the background is officers there. You'll notice there's not a necktie on any one of them. General MacArthur said, we work to get here. We'll be in a working uniform when we signed the peace treaty in Tokyo Bay. So there's an affront to the Japanese show. That's a Japanese delegation. You see them with ribbons and top hats and all. It was an affront to them because the Japanese like the pomp and pleasure that they all decorated. We're in a working uniform. We fought to get there, and we're in a working uniform when we signed the peace treaty, September 2nd, 1945.
Wow. What a history.
And it's an honor to be here. I'm one of the lucky ones. They say you're a hero. I'm a live hero. We had a lot of dead heroes that did not make it there. In my tribute, and I honor the people that passed before me there and the ones that are not with me anymore.
So you mentioned that you've gone back several times since it actually happened, and through the years you've been able to go back. How many times have you been able to go back? I've
been there many times there during the war, And many times after the war, thanks to the Greatest Generation Foundation, Denver, Colorado, has been taking veterans to various places throughout the world. But I've been there many times. It brings back some memories, a lot of sad memories, because one of the people on the USS Arizona was one of my neighbors. I knew him well. I played football against him there. And he's one of them still on the USS Arizona. So I got some sad memories, but good memories that we got a future to look forward to. You aren't going to change what happened in the past.
Absolutely. Have you been able, when you go on those trips, are you able to bring family back with you, or are they usually solo trips? Or
Couple of times with the family there, but most of the time it's just for the veteran that they had a chance to go there. But I'm just glad that I can do it. So many of my friends are unable to walk, can't get around all. And I'm just honored that I can do it, and I show off a little bit to it.
For sure.
When you go back to Pearl Harbor, Mickey, what do you like to see? What do you like to revisit or re-experience while
I
you're
like
there?
to think here's where we were at the time, and there's where the bomb hit there, and that's Arizona. Then I think about how sad it is for the people, 1,177 that died on the USS Arizona, some of our friends, and we were going to play football against them at 1 o'clock, December 7th, of 1941. I had my padding on during the attack. They couldn't hurt me with all my padding on. But we didn't get a chance to play that game. We had a water fight. We had things to do. They spoiled our weekend.
Yeah.
So that game's been postponed, and you've never had that game.
They postponed it. They didn't cancel it. They just postponed it. We had things to do, like fighting a war.
Yeah.
So we were kind of
Still waiting for your moment then, is what you're saying.
We would have won the game, though, anyhow. There's no doubt about it. That was going to be the Super Bowl of the Navy there. Didn't have all the hype that you do with the Super Bowl now, but it was a very important game there, and I was proud that I could be a member of the team, and I would have played it, except the Japanese goofed our weekend up.
Yeah. Well, speaking of football, we know we've chatted with you a little bit about football, and you recently had an experience, maybe doing a particular.
Sunday at the Raider football game there, they had me down at halftime. He introduced me there, and I got down the 3-point stand. Let them know that I'm ready to play there, in case they needed me, but they didn't need me there. They won the game. They won the game anyhow without me.
Well, I bet if the Raiders don't take you, the Navy will take you back.
Right.
So you mentioned honoring your friends when you go back to Pearl Harbor. How do you do that? How does a Pearl Harbor survivor honor his friends?
I give a prayer for them, because that's a tradition for the prayer in our nationality, the Eastern Orthodox nationality that I belong to. But I get a chance to roll a ribbon, especially when you get close to Arizona. I take off my hat, put my hand over my heart there, and a tribute for the people that did not make it. And I made it there, but they didn't. And I will honor them every time I go past them. I will go honor them.
Absolutely.
And they had a chance to throw a ribbon where they are at.
So you have a trip coming up soon, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So thanks to the Greatest Generation Foundation in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
I'm going to get to go to Hawaii again there.
And what do you have planned for this trip?
Yeah.
Well, I got the wife, which wife is going to go, and that makes a difference too, because she's busy packing my bag for all these places I go. Last year I was in Normandy there, and I was supposed to go to Australia. I was in Australia for the Invictus Games with Prince Harry and Meghan invited me down there for the Invictus Games there. And the day before we got there, they went to Singapore, and I never got a chance to thank them in person. But
well, I want to cover one last thing, Mickey. You mentioned that part of the importance of going back to Pearl Harbor, you feel, we just have about a minute, is the education piece. You want other generations to know the significance of Pearl Harbor. Can you say a little bit about that?
The kids that are growing up nowadays don't have a sense of responsibility. They depend on their mother or father to bail them out or whatever they're doing. They're not accountable for their own actions there. They don't learn by experience. I try to teach these kids there because I talk to a lot of schools. I talk to the kids there. Be sensible. You do something wrong, take the blame for it. Learn by experience. I was growing up, I did something wrong. I got paddled for it. Next time I knew better. But nowadays the kids there, if they do something wrong, the folks said, don't do it again, don't do it again. So they don't learn, they keep on doing it. That's what's wrong with this country nowadays there. The kids grow up with no sense of the responsibility there. You know, don't take the blame for whatever they do. As a result, we got problems. So I teach them to be accountable for their own actions.
So that's part of the reason why you go to Pearl Harbor, is to teach them the significance of that day, so they learn the significance of actions like yours and your friends.
I even talked to schools in Hawaii. In fact, they named a library after me at a school in Hawaii, a highly collegiate school in Hawaii there. Thanks to them, and I talked to them, and I talked to schools, clubs, colleges, anybody who wants to listen to me.
Listen.
I tell them a bunch of lies too.
Good. Well, Mickey, thanks for coming in and telling us some lies.
Yes, sir.
Happy birthday to you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. And just for the record, I think you could have beat me at that arm wrestling. Thanks for going easy on me. I was about to crush my hand here with this handshake.
Thank you.
Mickey, we're out of time, but thank you again for being on the show tonight. And we'll return with 3 Vietnam vets who have their own stories to tell about their return to the combat zone. But first, our own Shauna Springer talks with veteran Ryan Rector about his experience adjusting to life after service.
I'm pleased to be joined today by Ryan Rector, who served in the Marine Corps. He was an infantryman. He served from 2009 to 2017, and he is a veteran on campus and very active as a student veteran. Today, he's going to talk with me about his military transition. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
In our pre-conversations leading up to this day, you talked about everything kind of crumbling through your transition. Can you explain what you meant a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll try to illustrate it.
Okay.
Going into the Marine Corps, you're just kind of this blank slate. You know, I mean, obviously you have your own experiences through life, but they're going to build you how they want you. And they're going to make you become what they want you to become, or you're not going to get in. And so I equate that to like building a foundation. And then as I go through training, they're slowly building me up and up and up. It's kind of like a pyramid. And the top of that pyramid is going to, for me, was right before I got out or right when I got out. And I made that transition. And then I kind of look at it like an hourglass. So now, now that I'm outside, you know, it's just me and I'm that solitary point on that solitary tip. And it felt like I was like an inverted version of myself. So now I've got all this foundation and stuff above me, much like this or like a hourglass. And, you know, just rocking that one bottom block and just me questioning who I was or my plan when I got out, my transition when I got out, not going the way that I anticipated it and I expected it to. It just brought all of that crumbling down on top of me. And I just kind of felt buried. And like, you know, because the foundation of who I was just fell on top of me, right?
Okay.
And so it was just hard for me to kind of see like what pieces are really me and how can I rebuild myself now that I'm alone in the world. Basically, I don't have the Marine Corps as a structure. And I don't have the Marine Corps building me. I have to build myself now. And how do I do that? And how do I maintain a job and go get the education and training I need to be good at that job?
And what job, right?
Right.
Is the right job for you?
Yeah.
Even if you could do something, it doesn't mean that's a good fit for that deeper purpose.
Exactly.
Right? So you have to figure all of that out.
Yep.
And the weight of all of what you were is sometimes an intense amount of pressure. And it also sounds very lonely. I mean, you describe sort of feelings of isolation and feeling invisible in society. And I hear that a lot. Can you say more about your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a complicated aspect, I think, of my transition. Right when I got out, you know, I separated from the Marine Corps, so I separated from my tribe and my structure. Shortly thereafter, I ended up getting a divorce. And so like that aspect of my life was taken away, you know, and then, after that, trying to go to my family and my support system that I had rarely engaged, previously, and that kind of not working out, and all these situations with these people just not working out. And, I was kind of confused as to why, first of all, and second of all, trying to realize that who I was as a Marine, doesn't necessarily translate to civilian life.
And I think that's very common. I mean, I would kind of want to say that that's something I hear all the time, that relationships end in the transition. I've never seen any data on how many people get divorced, but that was such a common thing among my patients, that their relationships would be seriously rocked or would even end. Do you think that the stress and the pressure of all of that may have contributed to some of the feelings that you had and some of the relationship challenges?
Absolutely. I wouldn't blame the system per se. I would blame its absence. Because I have the structure in the Marine Corps or the military, and they tell you what to do, where to go, who to be, basically. And so you take that away, and all you're left with is your wife and your family or and yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't realize like what the absence of all of that is really doing to you, and how it's affecting your personality, your situation, your relationships with people, so on and so forth. And so I think that's super crucial to understand as a veteran transitioning, that, it's not necessarily you, and it's not necessarily the people you're with.
Right.
It's the situation or the lack of the structure that you once had, and you don't know how that's affecting you inside and mentally until you get to the other side and you're like, oh, I see it now.
And that's one of the things that I really think is important to highlight, is that you didn't come to me and say, I think somebody should take care of this for me. You said, I want to talk about my responsibility in terms of my transition and how I'm trying to grow and learn and go through this crucible that will grow you now that you're not an active duty Marine anymore. There's also, though, things that I think those around us, civilians and others, can do to make it easier for people to transition. And I wanted to ask you about both. First, what can civilians do to help bring warriors all the way home?
Realize what we just talked about, and realize the situation that they're going through. Like, you can't see it necessarily when you're on the ground face to face with that person, but if you could step back and understand the process that they're being put through, I think then maybe you have a better chance at going, okay, like, now I'm just going to be here for you. Like, I'm going to be a part of your support system and that structure that you're missing. I'm going to start trying to fill in those voids, because that's exactly what happened to me. I'm lucky. Okay, I had a family as a support system when I got out. So when my pyramid fell in around me, they were there to kind of make sure nobody came and stole any of the pieces, so I could rebuild, right? And so they were just there. Now, I felt that, but I also felt really, really ungrateful. Because I'm inward at that point. I'm tearing myself apart and subsequently hurting other people, not intentionally, but that's what's happening. And so, I think it's just important for, your support system or civilians to realize, like, that's a part of the process. They don't want to do it on purpose. I didn't want to be an ass and do that on purpose, but it happened. And that's a common trend I'm seeing through all my veteran buddies and their stories, versus people that I'm seeing right now going through the same process. Yeah. And you see it so clearly once you're starting to get on the other side.
And I think you stay a Marine throughout your life, because what happens to you when you become a Marine is part of the strength you carry forward. So how are you doing transition like a Marine?
I keep going.
Yeah.
I just keep going, and I think the unique thing about the Marine Corps is like the camaraderie and the brotherhood, and like, Marines kind of always flock together. We're very quick to grab somebody by their shoulder and pull them along with us.
Yeah.
And so I think that's it. I think, being in that situation with my fellow Marines that I don't even need to think about. I don't even need to know you as a person. You tell me you're a Marine and I see you struggling. I'm going to do my damnedest to pull you along and get you where you need to be, and keep you alive.
How would it rank for you in terms of other life events that you've experienced as far as challenge?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I would go through the crucible 100 times.
Yeah.
And it would barely equate to the last 3 years of my life.
Yeah. That's what I've heard. Well, thank you so much for coming in to talk with me about this. I'm excited to kind of follow you as you continue to go through your transition. And I know that you play a very important role in our local community in terms of bringing veterans into the tribe through the VFW, softball as a student veteran. So definitely, honor that as your role here.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. So we wanted to acknowledge we've got a couple of comments from our viewers, mainly to say happy birthday to Mickey from our fan club out there. Happy birthday again, sir. Are you out there with your own experience to share or have a question for the panel? We encourage you to connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Call us right now at 925-313-1170. Our phone lines are currently open. Joining me now are veterans Dennis Giacovelli, Joe Calloway, and John Robbins. Welcome, gentlemen. So to get us started off, we want to hear a little bit about your service. So we'll start with you, sir.
Well, I was an infantry platoon leader in Vietnam. I had my own infantry platoon for about 6 months, and we did search and destroy operations in the area. Rice paddies are right above the Mekong Delta, so there was, we do eagle flights, or we'd fly almost every day, sometimes many times during the same day. Our whole job was to hunt down people and kill them. And so what it involved in a lot of extreme violence. I felt very difficult about the service and the aftermath of that. After that, they sent me TDY to Thailand to bring back. I was pretty successful in what I did in the field. They sent me to Thailand, TDY, to bring back the first Thai unit that deployed from Thailand to Vietnam, called the Queen's Cobra. So I did 3 months in Thailand, TDY, and then I came back and operated with the Queen's Cobra I had 2 infantry companies for 3 months. And then I did another 6 months with the 5th Special Forces up in the Trung. Okay. And so I got a chance to see all the operations within Vietnam, all the special projects, and so I had a quite broad-based experience.
Yes, you did. Thank you for sharing. Yes, sir. How about you, sir?
I was in the Navy. I was in Vietnam in the small boat Navy. I was on PBRs, and it's called the stab boat. They're very small river patrol boats.
Okay.
And I spent all but about 5 weeks in the Mekong Delta, and then the boats went home and we got redeployed. I went to Da Nang for the last 5 weeks.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. How about you, sir?
Yeah, I was in the Transportation Corps and assigned to 2 Corps, which is in the central highlands of the country. And our mission was to supply the units that were north and west of our base camps. We had 2 units close to the coast and 1 unit in Pleiku. And we formed an H that we ran supplies up Route 1 towards Duc Pho in Lower I Corps. And then we ran cargo that was taken across country, was dropped in Pleiku, and the trucks would come back empty to reload the next day and do the same thing all over. The trucks in Pleiku went on a north-south run up to the Dak To, Kontum Dak To, and into Ben Het on the Laotian border. So our object was to keep everybody with the supplies they needed to do their job.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, you have a lot of experience in Vietnam, and as our Facebook audience knows, we followed you on a recent trip just a couple of weeks ago that you took to return back to Vietnam. And before we dive into that, because I know there's a lot of cover about that trip, but just real quickly, when you left Vietnam back in the 1960s, did you think that you would ever return back there?
It was not high on my list.
Happy to leave?
Yeah.
I had a job that was pretty much administrative job. You did what they told you to do. When I left, I gave my fan and my Army watch to the fellow who replaced me, and that was it. I never thought about coming back.
I actually had an opportunity. The Army flew me down to Washington, D.C., asked me to do one more tour for them in Vietnam, and they'd pay for the rest of my college. And I thought it over. And then I had also met my wife, and I was very much infatuated with her. So I decided to forego a trip to Vietnam.
Wasn't worth the free education.
No.
How about you, sir?
The last several years, I've reconnected with the people that were in the Stebbs small boat company, and there's about 35 of us that get together every other year. And I guess that started the process.
Okay.
But I think it was the Wheelchair Foundation that put me over the edge.
Yeah. So this opportunity came about probably several months before you guys actually left. And did it take some convincing for you to say yes, or was it just automatically ready to go? I want this experience to go back to Vietnam.
I think it was a Wheelchair Foundation for me, which was the motivational factor. I really hadn't considered going back to Vietnam until I heard about the Wheelchair Foundation and the kind of good work that they were doing worldwide. And then I thought it was a natural tie-in to also go back to Vietnam and see if I could deal with any of the issues that I brought home from Vietnam.
Yeah. So let's jump into that then, because you've mentioned the Wheelchair Foundation. We have a picture here, picture number 3 that our audience will see. This was the main purpose of your trip back to Vietnam, if I'm not incorrect. But so you have loads of wheelchairs, and you're going to help the community by delivering these wheelchairs for free. What was it like with this experience? This is obviously a community service type event. What was it like returning to Vietnam with a different mission in mind, being that primarily you were there to help people who are disabled?
Very humbling.
Go ahead.
Always in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but think that we caused a lot of that. So it was not just helping people; it was helping people that we affected.
Okay. How do you think that we affected them?
Probably mostly Agent Orange.
Agent Orange?
Yeah.
Okay, so some of these diseases that these disabled people were affected by the exposure to that chemical.
Yes.
Okay. We have a caller. We'll take the caller, and I don't have a name, but hopefully you're in the studio. We have Sean. So Sean, are you with us, Sean? Okay. Sean, are you there? All right, we're working on that still, and we'll take Sean's call in just a minute. Sean, are you there?
I am.
Okay, Sean, thank you. Do you have a question or comment for our guests?
I have a comment. I'm an Army vet. I just want to tell you what a great table full of guests you have, and tell them thank you for their service and welcome home.
All right, thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think that's a proper way to welcome a Vietnam veteran to anything.
Absolutely.
So,
Can I expand on something that my friend said? I found really cathartic for me to go back because I did so many things in Vietnam that were unbelievably horrible to the people there. I think I had a discussion at the end of the trip with a group that we had, because we became incredibly tight as a group. I mean, it's amazing the camaraderie that was established amongst all of us in this particular group. And and there were probably 6 Vietnamese on the bus that we were riding on. And I apologized to them for the terrible things I did to their country, because I felt awful because of, what I did was nothing I'm ashamed of doing, because I was a soldier and I did what I was supposed to do, but it was pretty horrible when you think of it in context of what we consider as good moral behavior, ethical behavior in our lives.
So photos 5, 10, and 13 kind of go along with this camaraderie that you're describing. Do you feel like as a group that many of you going back to Vietnam had some type of underlying mission? Was there something that you were seeking from this experience in addition to, I guess what I'm hearing, Joe, is in a sense kind of seeking forgiveness?
Well, it was a golden opportunity, and I was interested in going there. I knew I wasn't going anywhere where I'd been, so I said, I'm going to see everything that's brand new. And the people that were with us, that's master charge priceless moment.
Yeah.
You couldn't put that group together if you tried. And that made it all the better. And to be able to speak to people who were with us, who were born in the north of Vietnam, who made it to the U.S. and then could explain the experiences that they had while we were there and do the interpreting for the presentations. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely fabulous trip. It couldn't have been any more perfect. And it couldn't have been any nicer group of people. And also, we found, and I think Dennis can probably expand this better, but we found the people in the country so happy to see us and be with us.
That was the question I was going to ask about the reception that you guys
Yeah.
had when you did go over to visit, and how the locals there received you.
Well, first of all, you have to remember that over 70% of the Vietnamese population is under 40. So they have no knowledge of what took place, other than what the communists have told them. But
Right.
they're kids. They don't, it means nothing to them. They were nothing but gracious to us.
Yeah.
Every day we had people going out of their way to make us comfortable.
And the country looked so much more prosperous than the country that we left 50 years ago. We actually see just an incredible economic revolution. And I think John understands it really well, because he knows that in 1990 things changed. And why don't you
Well,
expand on that?
actually, I was speaking with Steve Burchek, and I was explaining to him that where I was agricultural area, and the rice fields were beautiful. I have pictures of the greenest rice fields. What I missed on this trip was we were traveling on roads, and every store, every entrepreneur, every person takes their 10 feet of street front, maybe 20, and they go straight up 3 floors and they put their store. So I can't see those beautiful rice fields that I remember in the coastal highlands area, or even up on the plateaus. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. But everybody worked so hard. The lady had her bicycle. She'd have melons on the back. She'd have melons on the front. She'd have melons hanging. She'd drive her bicycle through, and she was just getting on with her business. I didn't see her at the bank putting her night deposit in, but she had something for tomorrow. And the people, I didn't see anybody who wasn't working. We saw kids who played in the side of the street where today, don't do that, don't do that. And these kids were tremendous.
Everybody was happy. But explain to them about that change in 1990 that you told me, that historical fact, when the Communist Party...
Well, in 1975, they obviously had complete disregard for the agreements they made. They never stopped. They came down, they overrolled the country. Nobody criticized them for doing that. And then they immediately went into the, we're communists, we're going to set up things, we're going to take the land away, we're going to give it this guy. Until 1990, they starved the people to death, put people in re-education camps, And we were able to share some of that with our Vietnamese friends whose parents.
Speaking of Vietnamese friends, I want to cover a couple of experiences that you guys had. Photo number 12 shows that you guys actually reconnected with some unusual friends because you had a chance to visit with Vietnam veterans from the North Vietnam Association, so North Vietnamese Association. So you actually had a moment to exchange coins. Or what happened here, Dennis? You're in the picture
And Viet Cong.
in the Viet Cong.
Yeah. We had a dinner set up, which almost didn't take place because of the government.
So the picture's up here. If you could kind of describe that to us on the screen.
Well, first of all, it was a little stilted to begin with. There was about 20 of their veterans and 8 of us. And it was a little stilted, and then the beers started flowing. They had cans of beers, and soon we realized that they liked their beer, and beer just was flowing. So at some point, their leader, their president, and I, as our vice president, got up and I honored him with a challenge coin from our building, the Veterans Building, and he gave me this lapel pin.
Okay, I'll hold it up.
I'm not sure what it says.
Let me ask you, we have a couple more pictures to look at here. What was the experience like meeting the North Vietnamese, some of the enemy that you were fighting against back in the 60s? What was it like shaking hands with them?
They're just like us.
Yeah.
We talked about their family, how long they were in the service. They're just like us.
The same fears, too. The same apprehension about war. And one of the things we found out, that when you drink enough beer, you don't need an interpreter. You just go, bah, 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 yeah, and laugh and have a good time.
Yes.
It was a fabulous time.
One of the things I want to cover, because we have just a few seconds, in picture 17, you guys are actually meeting with the MIA team. Tell us about that experience real quickly, because I think
we had a little bit of time. It was too short, but we met with the MIA detachment, which are all military personnel assigned to the mission of investigating and recovering missing in action soldiers. They gave us a wonderful presentation. The picture shows a flag, which I had taken with me. We wanted to fly it over their detachment, but they're not allowed to do that, had to go over the embassy. So that's the flag that we have in front of us. And they're all very professional people, and it's a privilege to understand their mission and the quality of the people that are signed there.
So lastly, did you guys visit the Hanoi Hilton? I think
We went to the
Hanoi Hilton, which is a famous place for where POWs were kept.
Yes.
During the last. So Dennis and Joe, we have about 30 seconds. Tell us about the experience visiting the
No, you go
five-star.
ahead. You go ahead. I have one last thing about.
There's a famous saying that the victor gets to write history, and they absolutely did that here.
They are very good.
They had our POWs cooking Christmas dinner, playing
volleyball.
games.
Volleyball.
Yeah, it was
Gun.
unbelievable. Rewrote history. Go ahead.
I have a couple of pictures I want to point out. Picture number 9 is one of my favorites.
Picture of John. We have about.
Oh, yeah.
We have about
Then my next favorite picture is number 1.
Okay. Of course, he wants to leave the best for last. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show tonight and sharing your experience. I know that your trip in Vietnam certainly couldn't be covered in this short segment, and obviously it was very impactful in terms of his experience and the places you got to see, but also very emotional as well. So thank you for sharing some of those stories with us tonight and giving our audience just a little bit of an idea of what it's like to go back to the combat zone. So thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll be hearing more about returning to the combat zone right after this word from Eric Strom, a Veterans Voices Special Correspondent.
Hey everybody, this is Captain Eric Strom with the 34th ECAB, the 34th Expeditionary Combat Aviation Brigade. I am really happy to be the special correspondent for Veterans Voices. So over the next 5 or 6 months or so, I'm going to be coming to you live with some different experiences of soldiers as we deploy to the CENTCOM area of responsibility in support of Operation Spartan Shield and Operation Inherent Resolve. I'm going to take a look at what warfighters today are experiencing and what kind of struggles they have. If you didn't catch the intro video, I'm the behavioral health officer for the 34th ECAB. So I'll be following those trends, helping out soldiers and leaders, and really just seeing what warfighters are seeing out there, in Iraq and Kuwait and those AOs these days in comparison to perhaps what some of our viewers would have experienced during their deployments. So looking forward to this opportunity, and certainly look forward to any questions or comments from folks. All right, until next time.
Back. So our next guest is Mr. Jerry Hero. Welcome. And can you give us a little bit about your service as well?
I served in Vietnam, U.S. Army, 1967-1968, with the 4th Infantry Division, 3rd Battalion, 12th Infantry Regiment. I was a mortar platoon leader for the first 6 months, and then a PIO officer for the 2nd Brigade of the 4th Infantry Division. All my service was up in the Central Highlands.
Well, we appreciate you sharing that with us. And we know that for you, a big part of your role with the gentleman that we're previously on was the fact that you got a chance to actually coordinate the trip going back. So can you explain a little bit about that process?
I have made 2 previous trips, not including my wartime service in Vietnam, in 2006 and in 2012. So when the opportunity came up to do another wheelchair distribution with the Wheelchair Foundation, David Bering asked me to kind of take over the veterans portion of it. The trip back to Vietnam was going to be in a 2-prong. One, of course, would be directly related to the veterans, and then the second was the wheelchair and orphanage donations that we had made through funding was made through fundraisers. So I coordinated the veterans portion. The 2 locations that was spoken about earlier was I requested that we have a meeting with the Vietnamese veterans, which was that was fairly easy to do. The second part was to arrange the tour of the defense agency, the DPAA, Defense POW MIA Agency, accounting agency, DPAA. And in the last 2 trips back, 2006 and 2012, we had done the same tours. So I wanted our veterans on this trip to experience the same feeling that the 2,200 POWs and MIAs that we lost in Vietnam are never forgotten. So I just found out from the people that went that the MIA counting was approximately 2,200 in the total Southeast Asia theater. It is now down to about 1,100. Wow. So they have recovered and identified roughly, 2,800.
A lot. Right. Give us an idea of how many months or even years does it take to prepare a trip? We've got some, like the War Remnants Museum, which is on picture number 4. Some of the places, the banquet hall, which is picture number 6. So if we can look at picture number 4 and 6, how many months does it take to prepare these types of efforts on a return to Vietnam?
The actual preparation of the trip was basically working with the travel agency in Vietnam. And it's a standard tour package. Most of the locations that they visited this year were the same locations that we visited in 2006 and 2012. 2012, I had an opportunity to break away from the group on a separate tour to go through the Central Highlands where I served. Oh, wow. That was also working through the travel agent who then made contacts within Vietnam to line me up with other travel agents in the Central Highlands.
So, because you just mentioned it, what did that feel like to you? That was your first time going back to that specific
No, that was 2012.
Right, that was the first time you had gone back to that specific area where you previously served.
For me, it was unreal. The area was totally non-recognizable. I think John Robbins spoke about the rice paddies that he missed seeing. Well, in the Central Highlands, it was triple canopy jungles back in 1967, 68 when I was there. Today, it is farmland, primarily coffee, black pepper, and rubber. What was triple canopy jungle no longer exists. So for me, it was a total disbelief in what I had seen, 50 years ago. Very unusual circumstances. I was taking my wife to tour the Ben Het Special Forces Camp, which is located right at the tri-border area, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And I was explaining to her where we were, where my motor platoon was, and where the command section was. And all of a sudden in the background, I heard rattle of automatic weapons fire and mortar explosions. Mm-hmm. And it was like approximately 48 years, almost to the day, that we fought the Battle of Dak To. And here I was back in 2012, and I'm saying, oh no, the war's still going on. But immediately was just like, at least I didn't hit the ground and duck, looking for cover. But it was still a very intense moment for me.
We have photo number 7, which shows a time difference between China Beach in Da Nang in 1965 and 2019, just for our audience to look at some of what Jerry's describing, how this landscape has changed and just how the place is different than it was back in the 60s. When you think about a Vietnam veteran or any veteran going back to visit a combat zone, what do you recommend in regards to what should they see, what things maybe should they not see?
I would recommend that you see everything. In fact, tours can be arranged working through the local tourist agency to go back to where your fire bases were, where your base camps were, and so forth. You will not recognize anything. It's all totally different. Don't expect to go see the bunkers or the sandbags or the concertina wire, because all of that no longer exists. It's just totally modernized. The country today is totally different from what we experienced during the war.
So we've got a question here. How many vets from the group have gone back to Vietnam?
Roughly over the 3 trips that we have made, I would say, let me take a quick count, 1, 2, 20. I would say at least 30 veterans from the Vietnam veterans have made the 3 trips that with the Wheelchair Foundation back to Vietnam.
Do you guys usually collect any sort of like after action type reports or anything once these guys go back and they've got their experiences? Are you guys capturing these aside from photos and some sort of journaling or anything of that nature?
Not so much. One of our members in the 2006 has done a video that he has edited. I've seen parts of the video, but that's about it. I think there will be a presentation in the January Vietnam Vets Diablo Valley meeting, where the attendees will talk about their trip.
One final question for you, Jerry, and this is a follow-up question from Vincent. Thank you, Vincent. Anyone regret going back to Vietnam?
I have not come across any. For me, it was very cathartic, and it put a lot of ghosts that I had to bed. I mean, so especially Vietnam vets, thinking about it, please, I encourage them, go back while we still can.
Right.
I did not make this year's trip because of some physical ailments that I've suffered.
Right.
So,
Thank you so much, Jerry.
Thank you.
Appreciate all that you do to help Vietnam vets get back to the combat zone.
thank you.
We would like to take a moment to thank U.S. Army veteran Shell Clements, who accompanied the U.S. Vietnam veterans on their just completed trip to Vietnam. She was our official foreign correspondent and sent us daily reports along with hundreds of photographs so that our Facebook fans could keep up with the details of the trip. And thank you for tuning in to the show tonight. We've had a meaningful conversation with our panel, and we hope that you've enjoyed it. Before we go, we'd like to share a few events and resources in our community. Honor Flight Bay Area recognizes American veterans for your sacrifices and achievements by flying you to Washington, D.C. to see your memorial at no cost. Visit honorflightbayarea.org to learn more and to apply to take the trip. The Honor Flight National Network is the national nonprofit organization that started it all. Learn the history of the organization, other programs they offer, and download documents at honorflight.org. Team Rubicon unites the skills and experiences of military veterans with first responders to rapidly deploy emergency response teams to emergencies across the country. Learn more about joining Team Rubicon at teamrubiconusa.org. And the Wheelchair Foundation is changing the world by helping bring wheelchairs to those who desperately need them. Learn how you can help at wheelchairfoundation.org. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch this episode and many others on our YouTube channel at Veterans Voices of Contra Costa. So be sure to subscribe. Our next live broadcast will be Monday, December 18th at 7 p.m., so be sure to tune in. Before I say my last lines, I'd like to also just say happy birthday again to our Pearl Harbor survivor, Mickey Ganich, and thank you and welcome home to our Vietnam veterans who joined us tonight. And if you haven't had the opportunity to meet a legend like a Pearl Harbor survivor, be sure to be intentional about thanking them and get the chance to get to know them. And if you haven't had the opportunity to shake a Vietnam veteran's hand and welcome them home, be sure to do so. We leave you with the world's most interesting man singing the praises of our very own Dr. Shauna Springer, who will be featured in our next month's show. This is Veterans Voices of Contra Costa County signing off, wishing you all a relaxing evening. And for the veterans out there, thank you for your service and welcome home.
My friends, the first step of being interesting is to know who you are. After years of service in the military, you identify with the uniform, but that's not who you are, because you are much more than that. The best way to serve beyond the military, to the fullest expression of yourself, is to read this wonderful book Jason Run Coroni and Dr. Shauna Springer have developed. It's a game-changing resource for your potential and your relationships with the people you care most about beyond the military. It's a leader's handbook for warrior reintegration. It will be available on Veterans Day, November 11th. Do yourself a favor. Give something to yourself or to another fellow veteran that you care about. Purchasing this book embraces life beyond the military. Thank you so much for your service for so many. You are appreciated more than you will ever know. My friends, stay interesting, stay thirsty for all things, and I wish you the very best. And stay healthy. Adios.